Hello, welcome to another episode of the Launch Notes podcast. I'm Blake from Launch Notes. Really thrilled to be joined today by Greg Fulton. Greg is Senior Director of Product Management at Blue River Technology. He's also ran product teams at exciting companies like WorkPattern, Light, and AdRoll. Got some really exciting stuff he's working on now that I'm excited to dive into. Going to learn a lot from Greg today, so let's get to it. Greg, welcome to the Launch Notes podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'd love to learn a little bit about, maybe you can talk about your path into product management. I know you were saying that it's maybe not like the typical path that you might see where folks go, Ivy League business school, Google into PM work. You were saying you had kind of an unconventional path, so I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm of a very rare tribe of PMs who were English majors in college.
Nice.
So I went to a small liberal arts school on the East Coast. Always thought I was going to be a high school English teacher because both my parents were teachers. And when you grow up with teachers as parents, you assume that's the only potential career outcome. Kind of got a taste for writing when I was in school. And when I came out of school, I decided not to be a teacher and to try and figure out something in a different sector. And I got a job at a startup as kind of their marketing content writer. And it was a super small sub 10 person company that was kind of trying to take a LinkedIn model to the job market in India. And this is circa 2006 or so. So they needed someone who could write to a young college audience. So I got a job basically based on that writing background. Once I got there, I quickly kind of started doing what you do in a startup, which is grab any problem that needs to get tackled. Had no idea what product management was when I started on that journey. And then over time, started to spend more and more time with the engineering team. That company ended up going under. I got a job at a sub 10 person startup called AdRoll, and was one of the kind of couple operational people in the company. It was basically all engineers and then a couple operational folks. And I quickly kind of became what they coined the term the Greg API. I quickly was anything that looked like it should be automated, but you were in the fake it to make it mode, was me running around behind the scenes. And that kind of put me on the front lines with the engineering team, and increasingly over time started spending more time figuring out, which problems for our customers we should be solving, what were the potential right solutions there. And so then when our then head of product left to start his own venture capital firm, our CEO pinged me and just said, "Hey, we're gonna try something." And I kind of thought he would plug me in to do things like bug triage or something along those lines. And he was like, "Oh, we're gonna put you in a temporary product."
Awesome.
Which I mean, he knew that was kind of my ambition, but I was massively underqualified for that role, which is kind of I'd say that was a theme throughout my career. But he threw me in, and I was blessed with a CEO who, gave me leash to fail and figure things out, and fail I did. And, eventually I started picking my head up and looking for external resources, became kind of a disciple of the Marty Kagan books and workshops and those types of things, and kind of read everything I could get my hands on in product, and kept finding new mentors to hound as I scaled through my career. And so as AdRoll grew, I was kind of forced to grow along with it. And so right about the time I figured out how to be a somewhat effective product manager, I had to figure out how to go hire product managers. And right around the time I figured out how to do that, I had to figure out how to build a scaled product org and bring in product directors, and, eventually figure out how to go from one product to a product portfolio, how to enter new international markets, all those fun things. And so it was kind of one of those kind of situations where it wasn't how I drew it up, but, it worked out really, really well. I think that type of a trajectory forced me to grow really, really quickly. There was kind of no option but to figure it out and grow. So
yeah,
definitely not your path.
No, what an awesome path and story there, man. That's really, really cool to hear. And dude, you're making me feel bad because the first part of that, I feel like I'm looking in a mirror. This is crazy. And we have not met before this conversation. Both my parents are also teachers. Briefly thought I would be a teacher. I ended up doing English and comms, started my career as a writer. So I was in newspapers for several years before jumping onto the content side of startups, and kind of, I obviously went more the path with kind of content and product marketing, but yeah, kind of crazy trajectory there at the beginning. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think there's a lot of great lessons in there for folks, just in terms of, yeah, it can feel like right place, right time, but you also, it's creating the right reputation with the right people, and, kind of connecting, like you said, that CEO relationship you had, where it's like, you show your aptitude, you show your appetite and your skill set and your hunger and your ability to just kind of like roll your sleeves up and figure stuff out. And then, folks end up, looking to you when they need someone to, take on something challenging. And for you, it was diving into a product role. And that's really cool to see that path. And I think a lot of folks, they get kind of hung up on the mechanics of, what do I need to do to be a PM, or how am I going to get my PM foot in the door? And a lot of it can be, showcase your overall self and your energy and everything now, right? Like, do whatever you're doing now in such a way that people know you can adapt and try something new.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And that's been my advice to people trying to break in that don't come from a typical background, is, get as close to the product decisions as possible in a role that you can with that background, and whatever ball is thrown your way, just absolutely crush it. And, eventually that becomes your reputation. And start doing product work before you're in a product role. It's also how I started sourcing PMs when I was scaling the org internally. So I just looked at that person, no matter what they did a great job with it. And I would try and pull those people in.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And, whether it's product or something else, like, because I'll sometimes have conversations with, forgive me listeners if I've brought this up before, but like, I'll have conversations with folks who are interested in, kind of a function change like that. Like, I'm doing this now, I'm doing PR now, but I want to be in product marketing, or I'm doing, content or marketing or growth now, but I want to be a PM. And a lot of them want to switch. They don't even have that function in the company they're at now, or they don't even work closely with those folks now. But a lot of what I say is just like, don't try to, it's really rare that you're going to switch companies and functions all at once. That some company that needs a PM is going to gamble on someone they've never worked with before, who's also never done PM work. But if it's someone they've worked with before who does support or documentation or marketing or growth or whatever, and it's like, great, they have a great track record at that, and I know who they are, we worked with them, now I can take a gamble on, them switching functions. But yeah,
another really good way to showcase that, if you are someone who's trying to make the jump into product within a company, is to have a product with whatever skill set you have. So one of my favorite examples is, we had this really, really strong, I think his role was like biz ops, or he was originally in sales and then biz ops. And shout out to Jacob Bockelman, who's also an ex-AdRoll person and friends with Blake as well.
Nice.
And he had said, I want to move into product. And what I always say to people when they come to me and say, hey, I want to move into product, is that, like, okay, first challenge is identify a problem in your existing function and figure out build a product around it. And what he did was he was kind of an Excel master, and he saw that other account managers were having this problem where our reporting dashboard wasn't doing the job well enough. And so they would dump out all the data, and then they would do all this manipulation to create different high-level data points that kind of told the story, and visualizations and whatever. And he just created a whole series of macros and basically a template that you could just grab the data, throw it into, and it would create like a new dashboard. And the adoption across the account management group was gigantic for this thing. It's like everyone was using it. I was like, this guy already built an amazing product. He just didn't have engineers actually there to help execute on it. So he did it himself. And so it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And he became a really, really strong product manager in our org. I think he might even still be at.
That's awesome. And yeah, a lot of people, they might not realize it, or they might be waiting for the opportunity or something, but it's like, I like the way you said it. I sometimes phrase something similar around like, whatever it is you have, like treat it like a product and apply some product thinking to that. And that might be like a simple internal process. Like it might be a small internal tool, or it might be some, some process that you manage for just a couple people over there or whatever. But if you're creative and have that hustle, like you can find a way to apply some product thinking to that thing. It doesn't have to be, sort of like a literally defined product, but it could be something as simple as an internal process. But start applying that product thinking, right? Like, send surveys to stakeholders about how it's going, like collect some new like feedback or, usage metric that you didn't previously have, like introduce an improvement or a new version of it, add some feature to it, whatever it might be. Like you can do a lot of, getting the reps of PM work in with almost any, I think almost any role could find a way to do that to something that they have some agency over.
Yep, no, completely. And by the way, just for product leaders, it's a really good filter if you're constantly getting grabbed by people at your company that want to join product and figure out how. The number of people, probably like a 10-to-1. If 10 people ask you, hey, I want to join product, how should I do it? And you give them this exercise of come up with a product.
Yeah.
About 9 of them aren't going to do anything.
Nice. Yeah.
So it filters out a bit for you as well.
That's great. Yeah. That's been kind of been kind of a recurring theme with a lot of these conversations. It's like, that's great advice for, managers or people on the receiving end of that request. But if you're on the other side of that, like burn some calories, make an effort, do something to show that you've tried or like expended some energy, and you're not just looking for, a favor or something. You're, because then that's such a much more intelligent conversation you can have with your product leader too, is like, because you're not just saying like, hey, can you hire me in product? It's, hey, I'm treating this, I built this product, or I'm treating this like a product, or I'm doing product thinking around this, but I'm stuck on this very specific thing. Like, what would your advice be? Then you're like having an in the weeds product conversation. You're not just having a, hand me a job conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Anything else that you recommend or think about in terms of like what you kind of had to absorb as you were kind of figuring product out for the first time?
I think, I went from when I was just starting out, I'd say, really, I didn't have any kind of rigor or process around it. My assumption was because I was closest to the problem set that my answer was the right answer generally, which was definitely not the right approach. And that caused a lot of missteps. And then I kind of swung the other way, where I think I talked myself out of a lot of really good ideas in the name of kind of really thorough frameworks and processes.
Yeah.
And I kind of landed somewhere in the middle with my approach to product, which I use the phrase kind of do the next thing as my, as kind of encapsulation of my product philosophy. And it's like, put in the rigor around really understanding the problem and ensuring that this is this problem is actually worth tackling. And then make sure you have the right amount of information to make a go forward plan. But a lot of times that long period of analysis was better served getting something out there and trying it and being proven wrong along the way. Cause it just ends up accelerating your learning so much. So I really look at, in lieu of, I think there are some really good frameworks out there, and I think there's product people that it really, really works for. And I think that's another big lesson I'd say is like every PM, you can be successful with any number of ways of doing it. There's kind of no script that you follow as a PM. I think there's some good best practices and guidelines and things, but I had this moment as a PM leader where I came out of a review with one member of my team. And, hey, you should be more like, it was like team member A, you should be more like team member B. And then I had the review back to back with team member B, and it was like, hey, you should be more like team member A. And it was like this light bulb moment that, no, they shouldn't. They both have like, one of them was kind of your, the prototype of like, really, really strong, detail oriented, thorough product manager. Wasn't good at the time, although she very much evolved and became really good at this, of kind of 0 to 1 discovery type work. And the other PM was really classic, came out of YC, really, really good at kind of that 0 to 1 iterative, big picture thinking, not as strong at the time on, stakeholder management and some of the other kind of nuts and boltsy stuff. And when I realized, like, it's actually on me as a leader to route them into the right role based on those strengths and double down on those strengths versus trying to steer. I mean, not that they shouldn't work on those other areas, but doesn't take, there's not one prototype that can be successful in product roles. You don't have to necessarily try and change someone in that. So that was a little meandery, but
that's great. That's great advice and insight. And I think a lot of people leading teams sort of, and I've sort of fallen into this trap too, where it's like, you get the urge to sort of like pull everyone toward the middle rather than realize, like, I'm trying to build like a diverse team where there's like different skill sets. And there's like,
that's well put.
Like, I hate to be like, another tech bro with a sports analogy, but like the team, the sort of team construct, you would never go like, this person's great at rebounds, but not great at shooting threes. And this other person's the opposite. So it's like, like you don't need to like, necessarily like improve Steph Curry's like rebounding. Like, he can shoot threes. Draymond can pick up the boards. Like, you don't need to like constantly kind of like look at everyone's downsides and emphasize that. Like, it's okay to have, the magic is when you get both those folks on the same team and both really operating at what they're excellent at. Right.
Exactly.
Maybe we can, cause I want to leave time to talk about this. Maybe we can switch gears a little bit to, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now at Blue River?
Yeah, sure.
And even maybe some context.
A little bit.
Maybe some context too on just like what Blue River Technologies is. Like, maybe other folks aren't familiar with it. So maybe some context on the company and what you're working on.
Yeah, cool. So Blue River, it was a startup out of the Valley. Came out of a couple Stanford PhDs, and it was early days. It was a computer vision company focused on agriculture, so like ag tech basically. And about 5 years ago or so, it was acquired by John Deere, and so it operates fully independent of Deere. We have a 200-person or so office down in Sunnyvale. Obviously, these days people are kind of distributed all over the place, but it's about a 200-person company, almost exclusively engineers. A handful of product folks, no sales or marketing or anything. It's really kind of a hardcore engineering shop focused on everything from, products centered around computer vision to now I'd say more kind of wholesale autonomy based products. And so for anyone that saw kind of the CES announcement that Deere made around their self-driving tractor, that was fully concepted and developed at Blue River. And the way it generally works is, those things are developed at Blue River and then in conjunction with the John Deere engineering team. And then when it hits a certain stage, Deere handles kind of, the full scale manufacturing, production, all that stuff, branding, distribution, all those fun things that they're phenomenal at, ruggedization, all the things that a company like John Deere would be excellent at. And then a lot of the intelligence software still lives at Blue River. And so we're in the process of going from being focused entirely on agriculture to starting to look at new sectors that are also a part of the Deere portfolio between construction as well as forestry. So
nice. That's super cool. That's like, it always, I think it charges people up to like, hear about technology like that and autonomous, it's one of those things that's just like, so obviously like there's, we're kind of in early innings of potential around that tech. Right. I'd love to hear, cause I think folks would be curious about, what it was like to come into working on something like that. Like maybe, and I know you mentioned like we were talking about, like, you don't necessarily have a technical background, maybe you're fairly technical now, maybe you can talk about that a little bit, but just like, I think a lot of folks might be on the PM side, like intimidated around working on like autonomous driving products or whatever, like in the sense that like, oh my God, I have to be like a, technical super genius to be a PM on this product. Like maybe that's the case with you, maybe not, but like, yeah, kind of tell me how you came into that.
Yeah. It was kind of a unique entry point. I don't know how repeatable mine was for folks, but it was, I think it also it's related to how I thought about managing my career over the last few years. I woke up after spending 10 years building AdRoll and was really, really proud of the work we had done and the team we had built and the success we'd had. But I wasn't necessarily excited about having 10 years of domain expertise and getting people to click ads. That wasn't something that I had kind of planned out. And so I really wanted to identify a category that when I woke up 10 years from now, I was going to be really excited about the domain expertise I had. And so the whole autonomous machines world definitely fit that mold. That was kind of a key factor for me. And then the other big factor for me was I'm kind of at the point where I need to be really excited about the problem I'm tackling to go and tackle it, to put the energy in and the rigor that you need to build successful products. Sorry if you're hearing background noise. One of my dogs is flipping pillows over and being a
No worries. Yeah. In terms of like loud distraction things dogs could be doing, like flipping pillows is probably low on the list. So we're fine. Yeah.
Buddha's good people.
Nice.
They know Buddha well.
Awesome.
So then that kind of brings me to how I ended up at Blue River. So it was I live in, these days I live in Lake Tahoe.
Oh, nice.
In North Lake.
Sounds terrible.
And so yeah, it's the worst. It's like my favorite place on the planet. But during the Caldor fire, which was the huge fire that hit South Lake last summer, where they were evacuating all of South Lake, for those who don't know, I was out just doing kind of defensible space work on my property with like 500 AQI, wearing 2 masks. And I had already been on the journey of kind of realizing that I needed to work on something climate oriented to be excited.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of during that period where I was like, I think if I could do something in the wildfire space, that would be a problem that if I spent 10 years working on, I would be really happy about it. And so I started kind of thinking about, where technology might be able to help. And I had no background in fire at all. So part of it was starting to try and learn what kind of the complexity of the causes and how folks actually fight fires, how the hand crews go out and fight fires today and all that stuff. And started kind of coming up with a thesis around smart machines and bringing them into wildland fire. And I reached out to a couple people I know that are kind of in adjacent industries. And one of them is Willie Pell, who runs the autonomy group at Blue River, who's a longtime friend of mine. And he and I kind of we know each other through kind of surfing, mountain biking, skiing. And so we would go on long mountain bike rides together and just kind of riff on this idea of like, what could smart machines do to help solve this problem? And as an outdoorsman himself, he obviously felt the pain point, and also as just someone who lives in Northern California, he just felt the pain point. And so that led to more and more conversations, which eventually became hey, why don't we explore, you coming in full time and trying to see if there's something to this. And so I joined to kind of do that. And it's been about 6 months of just discovery work, really trying to understand. It's been a really complex discovery because it's been trying to understand the whole academic and science communities, learnings around wildfire and all that. And then as well as really trying to unpack the different organizations and how they approach these problems. And as well as also trying to ramp up on everything associated with self-driving and like autonomous machines. So for me, it's been really fun and exciting to kind of go super deep in all these topics. And we're kind of starting to arrive at a pretty good thesis on how we can potentially impact the problem. And it's going to be obviously a long journey to do so. But part of the decision to join was also the realization that if I'm trying to call up, the Fed and pitch them an idea like, hey, you should use Greg's robots. They're going to hang up pretty quick, but coming in with the backing of a company with the brand recognition and
right.
That already creates forestry machines.
Yeah.
So we're kind of at the point where, we don't know if this is necessarily going to be that we're going to pursue it full on, but we're starting to gain some confidence that there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such an important problem.
Oh yeah.
And so we would love to be part of the solution. I think it's going to be a really complex solution, but we'd love to be part of it.
Dude, sorry, I had COVID 2 weeks ago and I'm still kind of got a lingering cough here. Dude, that's outstanding. Like that's that's a really cool journey. And it sounds like you can tell just hearing you talk about it, you've got a lot on the horizon there you're excited about. So yeah, best of luck with that. And sounds like a really cool thing to be diving into. And I think this is a great lesson. I love the way, you frame that from the beginning around 10 years. Like, what am I going to be proud of to say I worked on for 10 years? And that's a really great, that's big and grand enough to like, it's a big chunk of my life. Like maybe it's not my entire career. It still gives me some flexibility. Like it might not be, the be all end all of what I do, but it does feel like big enough and grand enough to say like, this is a big chunk of my life and my career. So I really want to be sure it's something I'm passionate about and can wake up excited about every day on this timeline. Yeah. I think just having that kind of timeline is a hack or a cheat code for people.
Yeah. And I think it doesn't mean that when you take a job, you need to think about being at that job for 10 years. But, I think,
right.
One recognition for me is that I was way more valuable if I stayed in ad tech, my 10-year journey there, than I was if I pivoted into a new industry. But I knew that I didn't want to stay in that world. And so I wanted to be pretty thoughtful about the next world I entered. So that 10 years from then, when I was valuable in that industry, I was excited to continue down that path. And then there's just I think what motivates you at different stages of your career changes. And having gone from, being an ICPM to running a 25 to 30 person product org, I no longer really cared about kind of climbing that ladder anymore. And I really just cared about finding a problem that was really, really interesting and important. And ended up actually, the role I'm in now is actually an IC, which has been so much fun, by the way.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah.
That's not that it always will be, but for now it is, and it's been excellent. Dude,
awesome to hear. Wish you the best of luck with that, because obviously a super important problem to solve. And I'm charged up knowing there's smart people like you out working on that every day. Cause I think the ad tech world will be okay with one less PM. It will survive, but this is definitely something that could use more folks focused on. So that's just awesome to hear, man.
Yeah, I think everyone should start moving into climate tech in some way. I'm like, come on, guys. No, you're not. But.
No, good advice for sure. So I want to wrap up with two kind of quick fun ones here. First one is, and maybe you touched on it a little bit, but what's maybe a piece of like conventional wisdom that other PMs might just accept as status quo that is something that you would maybe question or push back on?
Maybe it's more, it's less for ICPMs and more for product leaders. I think, I guess if it's conventional wisdom, it would be, I think there's kind of no correlation. This is such a selfish, self-serving point. There's no correlation between like pedigree and like product output. And I've seen really, really strong PMs come through both paths.
Definitely.
And so figuring out how to divorce that from your evaluation process is, I think, how you get really, really strong people. And for me, that's always been about like hiring for ceiling, especially in startup. I've also never worked at a large scale company where maybe, what you're looking for is a bit different, but I've always focused my entire interview process on finding people who have a track record of being handed, this much, small amount of scope, and over time, always getting more and more scope because they just become that person in the startup that everyone trusts and wants to throw more to.
Yeah.
How do you find those humans? To me, that's how you build out the best organization versus, how do you just source the best resumes?
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be harder to do. If you've got a stack of MBA candidates from somewhere, like, yeah, maybe that's like conventionally easier. And it's sort of like, kind of the old adage around like, hey, no one gets fired for bringing an IBM or something, like the sort of enterprise legacy conventional decision, right? It's like you can end up sticking your neck out or getting bit a little bit or, kind of getting bruised by bringing in someone who doesn't end up working out or whatever. But if you're kind of committed to that philosophy long term, it's great for the overall climate of the industry too, right? Yeah.
Totally. And by the way, I've had phenomenal people that have come through top schools and from the early programs at Google or Facebook or whatever. That are also absolutely incredible. So it's not to say don't. My point is more like orient your process around almost ignoring that, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on really, really great people. And also a lot of those people it's really competitive to get folks that come from kind of that more tailored path.
Definitely.
So this will allow you to kind of open up your peripheral a little bit on the candidates that you can pull in. There's awesome ones from all backgrounds.
No, 100%. As a couple former English majors, I'm sure we can talk about that all day. But yeah, it's awesome advice. Last one, kind of just for fun too, but I like asking product people about products. Product people are passionate about products, so I get interesting answers. What's a product you've been excited about trying out lately? This could be on the work side or, just personal stuff.
I should real quick plug journey.io for folks. It just got launched on Product Hunt today.
Nice. Okay.
Really, really brilliant product mind. Peter Clark is the CEO and founder. I just took it for a spin and super impressed with it. And it's in the space of basically kind of trying to replace, your Google Slides with a much significantly more dynamic approach to storytelling. So that's one you should definitely check out. And then this is such a dumb one, but I use it an absurd amount of times during the day. Got 2 dogs.
Yeah.
Buddha, the 14-year-old, doesn't ever leave my side, so I don't need this one for her. But
nice.
I got Otis, who he just roams the neighborhood in Tahoe pretty much all day.
Yep.
He's got a GPS tracker. I've tried a few different ones. The one I'm on now is Tractive. It's awesome because, well, one, I just get to kind of follow his ridiculous like Oregon Trail around the neighborhood as he just goes like house to house, asking for his dog parents to come out and play, and then spends 45 minutes there and then goes to the next house. But also for like Strava Fitbit people, of which I am actually not, it shows me his amount of exercise compared to other dogs in the neighborhood, and I've become like weirdly competitive about it.
Yeah. You're like putting his collar on and doing laps.
No, he handles that for me. But it'll be towards the end of the month, and we'll be in the number 2 slot, and I'll be like, all right, Otis, I know it's 6:00 already, but I think we're gonna sneak in a mountain bike ride because you're gonna go and get Scout. It's the last thing we do.
You're slacking on the leaderboard here, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're slipping. So yeah, Tractive.
That's awesome.
Cool. There's a bunch of them.
Tractive.
Yeah.
I got to check that out because I've got a dog that's, I think he was like microchipped by the vet when he was a puppy, but there's a bunch of paperwork. I don't really have like an app that I can just.
That's really helpful if you lose your
what
dog.
I worry about.
Brings it to the vet or the SPCA or something.
Yeah.
This is so like, this is also
just
really
keep
good
an eye
for
on
training him. Because, you can set up a virtual fence that just tells me when he's left it. And so, when he was a little bit younger and less mature, I could just, as soon as he left it, I could give him a whistle back, and he kind of learned his allowable perimeter just from doing that. So
nice.
dog enthusiasts out there.
Nice. We'll drop that. We'll drop a link. Tractive, Journey.io. Check both those out. Dude, thanks for being here today, Greg. Super fun conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to.